Hello, ladies, gentlemen, and deceased. Welcome to my weekly Walking Dead review. Thank you so much for sticking around, and spoiler alert, because I will bear all in this review. So, if you aren't all completely up to date, then I would suggest that you hang out elsewhere, get yourself reoriented, and come back here for some discussion. So, I'm going to put a brief disclaimer at the beginning of this video because I know that some of you may be very distraught about this episode in that it had a very narrow focus. And I don't know how many of us were anticipating that. I personally thought, every single week I keep thinking, we're getting the arms up like it's time for war. And I mean, call me violent, but I've been bracing myself for this for the past few episodes. And so I kept kind of holding my breath and waiting, for things to like cut to a scene of something going on at Woodbury, especially after Andrea's not so ambiguous little decision at the end of the last episode, and wondering what the fallout of that was going to be. Well, so in this episode, we see the return of Morgan, and for a lot of people, that is a really awesome thing, and yet again, for some, it's going to be very frustrating that this episode was not as wide-ranging and action-packed, because, The Walking Dead lately, this season, has kind of followed this sort of progression of, like, there is this high-intensity, like, crazy action, and then it kind of drifts down a little bit into the range of, really focusing on character development, just kind of looking at where everybody's at and sort of, letting the characters kind of regain their bearings as much as they possibly can at this point in time. So again, very interesting pacing-wise, because I was expecting, that things were gonna hit the fan this episode, but instead we got to see some really interesting stuff with the return of Morgan, and it was very nostalgic in a lot of ways, and in an extremely bittersweet way, considering, the position in which they find Morgan, because as Michonne and Rick and Carl are coming up on the town, you got the feeling that we're dealing with a sort of Woodbury, except, there's a little bit of a manic twist to it. You can just tell by, the huge, bloody, you're not so welcome here kinds of messages I was getting of welcome mat with like 1,000 daggers coming up through the floor. That's a way to, that's the way to do it. Got all those salesmen coming to your door, Mormons, whatever. That's the way to take care of him. But, Morgan has come to a place where he is completely and utterly repulsed by the idea of hope, and he's just kind of, on this one-man island. He has completely secluded himself from everything and excluded himself from the idea that there could ever be any way for him to find any kind of society or friendship. He is just out, and he's pretty freaking well armed as well. He's established for himself quite a little fun house of booby traps, and it's just very interesting to, kind of parallel him with Rick in this time and how far they have come and the losses they've sustained. And what I think is important about this encounter with Morgan, whether or not it bears implications for the future, like, might Morgan actually join Rick and his group later on down the road, like, kind of swoop in at the last minute and decide like, oh, hey, by the way, I'm on your side. I thought about it. It's cool. Let's do this. That's kind of what I'm hoping. But, regardless, I think we finally see Rick coming to a place where he's starting to get his head above the water a little bit. He is starting to finally see things a little bit more clearly. The last few episodes, he has been kind of just doing his thing, just letting him be. He's just sort of on the periphery of everything and on the periphery of his own brain, dancing in a little tutu. I mean, it's been scary and disconcerting for those of us who are trying to follow him as the protagonist and as the noble hero of the story, if there really can be anything noble about anyone in this time. But we finally see him, you know, as he's trying to bring Morgan back to planet Earth as it now stands, and try to remind him of who he is and of the fact that there can still be a place for him despite the fact that he lost his son and his wife in that one just gut-wrenching instant. And so we see Rick having to climb back on top of himself and you know, take back the reins of his own life. And so that's kind of the way that I saw it. And you know, not to mention Rick takes a stab in the chest pretty freaking well. I gotta say, you know, like all those songs about like getting stabbed in the back and etc., etc. You know, Rick would never write a song like that because it doesn't really seem to faze him. It's just a flesh wound, apparently. Sheesh, man. It's like, dude, it's no big deal. It's no big deal. We're just trying to figure things out. Yeah, but the scenes with Rick and Morgan were extremely interesting and just very emotionally ripping for me. I might have almost shed an almost tear in just right in the corner. I was feeling, you know, a little bit of moistening of the eyes. It was very powerful performance delivered by Morgan, and I think that they did something very interesting with his character and very organic and visceral and just raw, and he is just so broken about his own fear that he's, you know, that he's at a place where he is too afraid of trying to join in with anyone else. He's all it's about for him anymore is just getting clear. He has built for himself this little world that he hasn't figured out how to get out of yet, and yet I still have an inkling of a feeling that he's gonna come swinging back into the picture. I just I don't know. I have a very strong feeling about that. What do you guys think? And by the way, as I have not yet gotten to read the chance, or what am I saying? As I have not yet gotten the chance to read the comics, there we go, is Morgan a character that is in the comics? That is something I don't know, and I'm too lazy to look up apparently. I guess I just like reading your comments, so let me know about that. It's very exciting to see him back in the picture, you know, even with the ambiguous note that things end on. I think it was really cool as Rick and Michonne and Carl are starting to kind of roll out, and you know, Carl's like, by the way, I kind of had to shoot you, I'm sorry. And that moment where Morgan just steps forward and he has like this sort of glint in his eye, and you're like, oh gosh, you shouldn't have said anything. But then, you know, he just looks him dead in the eye and he's just like, never be sorry. And that is just, being that was kind of the way that things ended in that situation, I just have this feeling that there could be something more to his story, especially since they dedicated an entire episode to the exploration of this character and just kind of, you know, looking at where things are now as compared to then. And you know, I just like to have, you know, I have the idea that it is going to situate itself nicely into the grander scheme of things, and as, you know, things finally come to blows in Woodbury as well. So let me know what you guys think about that. Also some interesting stuff with Carl and Michonne. And I think it was kind of cool how they interacted, and you know, going on that whole mission, you know, just to get that little picture. But it's something to hold on to in a time where there isn't much. And I think, you know, I think the only way to really get Carl to listen to you is kind of, you know, going about the Michonne way of things, you know, like, I can't stop you, but I'm gonna help you. I like that a lot. It seemed to work out okay in this particular situation. You know, makes me think of like when Carl was constantly running off in season 2, and you know, Lori's just freaking out at him, but she never really gets the opportunity or really tries to help him directly. She's just kind of trying to corral him without actually even doing it. So congratulations, Michonne, you got some good maternal skills going on. At least as far as the apocalypse is concerned, you're golden. So that was kind of a cool scenario. I felt really bad for those rats that the zombies got to terrify. I'm not really a rat person, but I was like, that would be kind of a bummer day for those guys. I hope they got lots of nasty snacks after the set. But what else? So very interesting stuff, and I really enjoyed the episode personally. I look forward to seeing, you know, just how it's going to intertwine itself into the events to come. So, are we actually going to see some warfare and some things really, you know, just come into action in the next episode? Are things going to, you know, I think that the focus is going to be switching back to the main group overall. We'll have to see about the repercussions of this particular little episode and other things. So leave your thoughts and comments below, and I will be more than happy to chat with you all. So we're starting to see Rick kind of come back into his own, and he and Michonne also have some cool moments, and it's cool to see Michonne as much of a loner as she is. You know, she's kind of finding her way in the group, which is sort of cool. And I dig her very much, and you know, how she kind of touches base with Rick about, you know, how she's talked to her dead boyfriend. It's like, it happens. Everybody's got a ghost. That's just sort of the nature of the beast, and I think it's reminding Rick, you know, that he has a place, and it's sort of bringing him back into his own. So maybe we will see a really cool confrontation with him and the governor, wherein Rick can actually be more in his right mind, which will make things more interesting, you know, when he's really acute and just honing in on everything. That is the Rick that I most prefer to see. You know, as much as it is nice to see the lovely Lori just trailing in the background in all of her esteemed beauty, it's it's good to see Rick kind of coming back into a place of, oh hey guys, so you know, I can actually do things again and communicate with you, sort of, sometimes. So yeah, what did you guys think of Morgan's return? Do you think that he's actually going to come back at some point? He has this sort of weird world that he has boxed himself into. He's convinced that he can't leave it, and yet there's this part of me that thinks, you know, there might just be a twist. Maybe he will come in at that last second. All I know is that Rick really needs a friend, and I think it would be awesome to see him and Morgan come together after everything they've been through and just continue to hash this out together. And, you know, it was just so good to see that really raw connection and just, you know, coming to terms with things between the two of them. Very nice, volatile performance on the part of whoever it was that played Morgan. You're awesome. I liked it. I'm ready for the scope to be broadened again and for the action to heighten. So I will leave you guys with those thoughts, and I hope to actually start reading the comics soon so I can be slightly less oblivious as far as, you know, the conversations that we have in the comics. So we've got a few episodes away from the grand finale. What are you guys anticipating? What are you hoping? What, who, when, where, why, and how? Can leave all of that below. I'm going to start reviewing Breaking Bad soon. I appreciate your guys' suggestions for shows. Unfortunately, I am a college student, and I'm not only financially poor, but also poor as far as the possession of time. I don't have much of it. So I hope to start getting into more of these shows that you guys have suggested to me that I haven't yet watched. So, and I thank you so much for liking me enough to want to listen to me talk about the other shows you like. It is my pleasure. So, in another Dexter Season 8 news vlog will be coming out next week as well, because I'll be on spring break. So, fantastic. Well, I shall leave you lovely people with this for now. I think this is like the 25th time that I have tried to say goodbye. What can I say? You guys are my favorite. Thanks so much for sticking around, and take care.